academically grounded with a bachelor's degree in accounting from UVU, and passionately delves into breathwork, teaching it in his studio and to local businesses in his spare moments. While visiting Utah in 1994, Louie went on a serendipitous blind date and immediately fell in love with the Vivian. This year, they will be celebrating their 29th anniversary. They have 3 beautiful children and just welcomed their first grandchild in January. So, guys, I'm super honored to have Louie here. Thank you for coming.
Yeah,
I know that it takes time out of your busy day.
Yeah.
So give Louie a hand, guys.
I'm super excited to be here with you ladies. Just tell me your age. What's your age ratio?
Sometimes 13, 12,
12, 13,
like
14,
15.
15? Okay, cool. So let me just give you a background of kind of how I grew up. I grew up in the middle of Indiana, which is I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Indiana. So, how many of you have seen the movie Field of Dreams? Seen that movie? You know how so I grew up and there's just cornfields. Like, I would have to run through 3 cornfields to get to my friend's house. Like, that's just middle of nowhere. We were really poor. And the first house that I grew up in, I remember, there were 13 kids and 2 parents, so there were 15 people in our house. And the first house I grew up in had 3 bedrooms. And my parents occupied one of the 3 bedrooms. And so then the rest of us were crammed in the other 2 bedrooms, in the living room, in the dining room. That's kind of where we slept. And that house had 1 bathroom, and it had 1 outhouse. And when I lived there till I was probably 6 or 7 years old. And I remember using the outhouse growing up as a little kid. Like, legitimate, I just thought everybody had one. Because my grandparents also had an outhouse, but they had an outhouse because their house caught fire in the 1930s during the Great Depression. And so they lived in a chicken coop and had to build an outhouse, literally lived in a chicken coop as they rebuilt their house that burnt down. So they had that outhouse like still usable. So when I was a kid, my grandparents had an outhouse, we had an outhouse. So I just kind of thought like that was something that everybody just had. That's just how I grew up. And the majority of my life growing up, we were on welfare and we just never had enough money to buy things. And everybody, it seemed like when I grew up, like everybody else had like fancy named brand clothing, and we had just whatever my mom, we'd go to Kmart and my mom would buy us these wrestler jeans that you could get for like $8 or something, and all my friends wore Levi's or Lee's or Wranglers or something, but the jeans we got were like $8 as opposed to maybe $15. That makes sense. Like we just were super poor. I had like 2 pairs of shoes growing up. I had a pair that I went to school in, and I had a pair that I went to church in. And then I had an old pair that didn't really fit, but I'd wear it if it was like going out in the mud or whatever growing up. And the house that I grew up in, so then we moved and had this other house where we didn't have to have an outhouse. But that house, the only way we heated that house was by having a fire in the stove. So if there wasn't a fire, there was no heat to the house. So as a kid, I grew up when I was there, from the time that I was like 8, 9, and 10, we were like bringing up wood, cutting wood, cutting trees down, chopping wood, bringing up. And by the time I was 13, 14, I was running a chainsaw, cutting trees down for wood for our house. So I'm just kind of giving you an idea, not that I didn't think it was really bad, I just felt like we always had work to do. And my wife was just talking about this a couple weekends ago, but every weekend when I grew up, that weekend was dedicated, Saturday was dedicated to work on the car to fix it so it could run for the rest of the week. So every Saturday, literally, I would say every Saturday, 80% of my Saturdays growing up was geared around fixing a car so it could run for my dad for the rest of the week so he could go to work. So my point is like, growing up and living that way, I always thought that everybody else was able to achieve things that our family wasn't because we couldn't dig out of this hole being poor. And when I was 12 years old, so from the time that I was 12 years old, so in the 6th grade, from the 6th grade to my senior year, I paid for my school books every year. How many of you guys pay for your school books every year? You guys know you have school books to pay for every year, right? You register for school and you have to pay to go to school. How many of you guys know this? Yeah. As a kid, like, I had to pay that myself because my parents didn't have the money to do it. And so from the time that I was in the 6th grade, I was mowing lawns or cutting wood. I was doing some type of work during the summer to save up money so I could go to school. So we can pay for it, because my parents just couldn't pay for it. And again, I'm only telling you this just to kind of give you context of like how I grew up. I didn't feel like I was destitute or that it was bad. I just felt like it was just hard to get through life. Everything just seemed really, really hard. And so doing that, like, and not seeing like anybody that how do I say this? Growing up and then seeing my siblings go out and get jobs, it didn't feel like anybody in my family really had a really good job that was gonna pay much better than what my dad earned. And it just didn't seem like that my life was gonna be much different than the life I grew up in. It might be a little bit different, because I'm not gonna have 13 kids. And if you have if you make, 30,000 a year, but you divide it by 15, that's not a lot of money per person, right? But if you make 30,000 a year, you only have 3 kids, you divide that by 5, that's a lot. Like you have more money per child or per person in the family. Makes sense? So I remember thinking growing up that my life isn't gonna be any different than my parents' life. It'll only be different by the number of kids like that we have, because I can make about what my dad made, and it would just be divided by less people. That makes sense? So, growing up, I never thought that big things I wished that big things were possible for me, but I never really believed or had this idea that my life would be way different than how I grew up. In fact, what I've learned over time is that when you grow up, as you grow up, at the time that you're 0 to like 8 or 9 years old, you grow up and you learn the rules of life by the way that you grow up in your family. And then those rules that you learn as from 0 to 8, 0 to 9, those rules and how life works, you use those same rules to get through the rest of your life. So, meaning this, if you grew up really rich, the chances of you being pretty rich are very good, because you will have learned the rules on how to be rich because your parents had those rules. Does that make sense? You'll navigate and make decisions like your parents made them because that's how you learn to make those decisions. Does that make sense? So I was at a seminar a couple months ago where this guy who's very wealthy, he coaches people how to be millionaires and all this stuff. And he kind of explained that. He kind of explained that again to the group, and just saying that it's hard for your life to be much different than the life that you grew up in unless you consciously choose not to live that way. It's hard because you've been conditioned to make decisions just like your parents have made decisions. Does that make sense? So you have, when a missile is shot, like when a missile gets fired, the missile doesn't just go like straight like this and say the missile is going to hit this red lock. The missile just doesn't go straight and do that. Here's how the missile travels. The missile has a computer in it, has a program, and the missile does this. The missile goes too high, and the program says it's too high, go low. Then the missile goes low, goes too high, and the missile is constantly doing this. Then the missile goes, hey, we're like a foot away from acquiring the target. you have to be at this level now, so the missile goes, and then hits it. But as it travels, it's doing this. Does that make sense? And what that is called is cybernetics. So a missile can only travel within the program that it's been given, and that's called a cybernetic program. You have what's called a psycho-cybernetic, psycho meaning psychology. You have a psycho-cybernetic program where you travel life the same way the missile does because of how you grew up, and you make decisions the same way your parents made, and your life isn't gonna be much different than this because of that psycho-cybernetics. Make sense? So they did a study and they took lab rats. In this lab, they took rats and they shocked the rat so it would move, and they would shock it through the maze until it got to the cheese. And so they were stressing the rat, they were making it stressed. They were shocking it, making the rat stressed. So they were stressing it until it found the cheese. They did this over and over, and 100% of the rats were able to find the cheese because they stress it that way. And then the rat can naturally find the cheese because it was stressed that way to find the cheese. Make sense, right? So then all they did was, like if this was the maze and the cheese was right here, all they did was they blocked the maze here and they made the opening right here and they put the cheese right here. So if you were the rat, instead of going straight, all you had to do was turn right and there's the cheese and get the cheese. Not one rat could find the cheese. 100% of the time, when they stressed the rats again, not one rat could ever, nor did it ever in any experiment, the rat find the cheese. And all the rat had to do was this, and it was right there. That was it. Does that sound ridiculous? Like, does that make sense? Does it sound ridiculous that it couldn't find it? You are literally no different than that. And here's the point. When your body is under stress and it is able to survive the stress, it remembers how it's survived the stress. And now your body can't deviate from how it remembered how to survive the stress. And that's how it always does it. Right? So if you grew up and you learned how to get through life and it was stressful growing up, and you learned how to navigate to get through life in a stressful way, you will not deviate much from that way because that's how you learn to thrive. Does this make sense? Do you see that makes sense what I'm saying? So what they learned is what you learn under stress, you do under stress. And you can't deviate from it because when you're under stress, your body goes into fight or flight mode, and then the blood rushes from your brain to your extremities. Your vision narrows, it focuses on the danger, and then your body is in fight, flight, or freeze. So you're either gonna fight it, you're gonna run, or you're gonna hold still and freeze and hope that what happens can't see you, but you freeze. And then if you survive that incident, then your body will constantly go back and do the exact same thing repeatedly because it made it through it. Does this make sense? So, why I'm telling you this is because you are unable to achieve much differently than how you achieve now, because a lot of times how we achieve it now in life, because we're so distracted with phones, because we have so much to be happening in our lives, we're very distracted, so we have to stress ourselves to get something done to achieve it. How many of you guys agree with this? How many of you guys put off to the last minute to do something because you don't have the willpower to do it, but then it's the night before, you're like, oh crap, I gotta do it tonight. Raise your hand if you do this. Okay, I do the same thing. So that's my point. Anything that puts you in a situation where you say, I don't really want to do that thing, you will never do that thing any way differently than you're doing that thing right now, because your body has learned to do it, has learned to thrive under it, and the results you're getting are satisfactory, and that's how your body has learned to do it. And you can't do it differently unless you physically choose to do it differently. You're consciously choosing to do it differently. You will just keep on repeatedly doing the same thing. That's why Einstein said insanity is doing the same thing over and over and hoping for a different result. Why would someone do the same thing over and over, hoping for a different result? Is because they're stressed when they're doing it. They don't know what else to do. They just keep on doing it. So those rats would get to the end of the maze and would literally keep on running into the wall. And they're shocking the rat. And it just keeps on hitting the wall. And they're shocking it, hit. And they shocked it for 10 minutes and it never found the cheese. So you do the same thing in your life, but you don't know that you're doing it. You just think something's happening because you're so conditioned to doing it a certain way. Am I making sense on this? So why am I telling you all this? Because the purpose of breath work is to uncondition the stress response. So the purpose of breath work is to get you out of your stressful state. Because anybody ever been attacked by a dog? Bit by a dog? Yeah. Okay. So keep your hand in the air. Like if you got bit by a dog and you saw that dog coming, did you not just like focus right on the dog's mouth and you're like, oh my gosh, and you can actually like see the teeth and you're like, those teeth are going to be in my leg in a sec. Like how many of you can remember thinking something like this? If you got bit by a dog, do you remember this? I got bit by a dog several times as a kid. I could remember like seeing the teeth and just thinking, oh hell, those teeth are gonna be in my leg in a matter of seconds. This is it. And I couldn't see anything else that was happening. And then all of a sudden my brother steps in and I'm like, I don't know where you came from. You're like an angel. But because my vision was so focused on just seeing those teeth, I couldn't see anything else. So what happens in your life is you get so stressed with certain things. That's why a lot of kids today have anxiety. Anxiety is the outcome of not breathing properly. That's all that it is. It's not that your life is overwhelming. It's just that you don't know how to breathe through your life. So anyway, what happens is fight or flight mode makes that so tunnel vision. And what breath work does is breath work opens up the vision. So now you can see everything. And if I was breathing properly in that moment when the dog was running at me, I would have seen my brother running with his bite to get between me and the dog. But I couldn't even see it. So what I found was in my business, I got into the title business in 2003. And just to give you perspective, and I'm not trying to I don't care that you know this, I'm just trying to help you to understand the level of success that I made. I was very poor. I was on welfare. In 2003, I was on welfare myself with my family. See, I couldn't navigate much different than my parents did. And at some point in my life, like I found myself on welfare. And I was like, I hit the same target my parents hit. And I remember being on welfare, my wife having to take the coupons to Macy's to get butter, bread, milk, cereal, and all this stuff. And she's like, I'm just embarrassed to do that because we didn't have to do that. Now we have to do that. And I remember her saying, like, when are we gonna not have to use welfare? And I'm like, I don't even know. So just to give you a perspective, like in 2003, that's where I was. By 2009, I had paid off my house because of the success that I had in my work. And by the time that I was 49 years old, so 18 years later, I was able to retire and not have to work because I sold my company for an amount that made me independently wealthy. Far richer than I ever imagined. Even my own wife, when we sold the company, she's like, I had no idea that it would be worth this much. I had no idea. She couldn't comprehend it because her life wasn't much. Her life was a little better than mine growing up, but my point is, she didn't even understand the type of success that I was having. Does that make sense? So again, I'm not telling you that to brag. I'm just telling you, like, I never thought that was possible. When I was your age, not in my wildest dreams would I ever think that I'd be worth that much money to where I could not have to work another day from the time I'm 49 till I die.
Louie, will you share how much you sold for?
well, I can't share, it's a non-disclosure, but I sold my company, I'll say this, I sold my company for more than 25 million, just to give you an idea. So, it's crazy, right? So, that type of, like, that happening to me just seemed, I remember just thinking, this isn't real, this almost feels like something's gonna happen, I'm gonna lose it, or something, somebody's gonna break into my house and steal the money, or whatever, right? You start thinking crazy thoughts, but my point is, it's hard to navigate differently. And what I found was, I learned breath work back in 2019, in the beginning of 2019, and breath work literally changed my life, and it accelerated my business to where we started making decisions way different. And just in 3 years, the profitability of my company, the success of my company, like, changed radically. And why did it change radically? Because I was like the rat, I kept hitting the same thing, not realizing the damn cheese was just right here. I just kept doing this. But what breathwork made me do was like, oh my gosh, oh my hell, there's the cheese. What am I doing? Why was I doing that? That's crazy. Doesn't even make sense. But doing this made sense until I started doing breathwork. And then I started to see possibilities and understand certain things about my life that I never thought were possible. So what I want to do today with you guys is kind of like go through a smaller version of this breathwork practice to share with you, because my son went to Westlake High School, wrestling. Westlake High School is like one of the best schools for wrestling in Utah, right? They're always like number 1, 2, or 3 in the state at the end of the year. And a lot of the Westlake wrestlers would rather do breathwork with them. And I did breathwork with the Westlake baseball team. Anyway, with a couple other athletes. I did breathwork with a couple of the UVU wrestling athletes off their UVU wrestling team. And what this practice does is it takes you out of a fight or flight mode, because you are under a certain amount of stress right now, and it takes you out of a stressful, the physiology of stress, and it opens up your vision to see what's actually possible in your sport, in your position, and what you do. And my son's on a mission right now in in Mexico, and if he could call in, he would tell you how breathwork like radically changed his wrestling, and to where he went to state and did pretty well. And breathwork was totally key for him to achieving that. Because what happened, now I'll just say this, is that he had limiting beliefs because he was 6'4". Who's heard of a wrestler that's 6'4"? That's tall for wrestling. All these wrestlers were short, they're broad, and literally he was losing in his senior year. He was losing more than he was winning. And one day I sat down with him and we made a list of all his limiting beliefs. And what I mean by limiting beliefs is all his reasons why he wasn't winning. And one of his reasons was that he was tall. Oh, I'm getting emotional telling the stories, it's crazy. Anyway, but one of the reasons why he was tall. And the other reason he gave was that he started wrestling late. He didn't start wrestling until he was in the 9th grade. And most of his kids started wrestling when they were in the kindergarten. These little kids. So he's like, I have less time in wrestling experience, I'm tall, he had all these reasons. And so what we did was we listed all of his reasons, and then we wrote the exact opposite of every one of those reasons. So he said, I can't win because I'm tall. Then he wrote down, my height is my advantage in wrestling. And then he wrote down, because I've only wrestled for a short amount of time, I haven't acquired bad habits. And then he wrote down, do you see what I'm saying? He wrote down the opposite of all of, he had like 16 things that he would say, and he wrote down the opposite of all of these things. And so that week, he wrote down all the opposites of them. So here's what I had to do. So every day he had to say the opposite. He had to say the other things. then he had to do breath work. And then he had to say the positive affirmations again. He would say, my height is to my advantage. Because I've wrestled for a limited amount of time, I don't have any bad habits. All my habits are great because I've wrestled for such a limited amount of time. Da-da-da-da-da. And he had all of these things, and he did breath work. And I'm not making the story up, but it sounds made up. Literally, he did that for 4 days. He started on Tuesday. He did it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then Saturday, he went to a wrestling tournament. He took first place at that tournament because he won 5 straight matches. And his coach was like, holy shit, Lou, what's the matter with you? Why are you winning? He's like, my dad, like in Bethlehem. He's like, this changed me. Because what happened was he was taking his body out of a stressful state, putting it into a relaxed state, because your best learning ability is done at a relaxed state, not when you're stressed. You learn better relaxed than stressed. Stress, you learn it like this, until you get this and get it done. Relax, you're like, I get all of it. I understand why we do this. Does that make sense? So when he was in a relaxed state, he was saying his affirmations, his body was receiving them and then believing them. So he goes to this tournament, and he's like, my height is to my advantage. And so he wins his 3rd match, right? And we're standing there, and he wrestled this kid, and the kid he wrestled was just huge. It's like, I'm like, I wouldn't want to wrestle that kid. That kid beat me up. You see this ring with this kid, I'm like, dude, that kid. Anyway, so literally we're standing out in the hallway with all these wrestlers, and the kid that he just beat, he's standing there and he says this to his coach, hey coach, no wonder I lost to that kid. Look how tall he is. How do you beat a kid that tall? And I'm like, holy shit. It's the opposite. Does that make sense? And now because this kid lost, he created a limiting belief that he can't beat somebody who's not tall. Does that make sense? Why does he believe that? Because his body learned that in a very stressful state. And his body said, I lost, I normally win. I usually win tall kids. I lost tall kids. Now his body has to remember that to move forward the next time. Don't wrestle a kid like that, you're gonna lose. Do you see what I'm saying? So your body just is designed to protect itself, and your mind is designed to use rationality to not believe everything your body tells you, because it's not necessarily true. How many of you guys follow this? Make sense? So today, what we're going to do is we're going to do a breathwork practice. And here's how you're going to do this. You're going to be laid down, your eyes will be closed, or you can have an eye mask on. I like having an eye mask on because I'm ADHD and I just open my eyes. I'm like, oh, I shouldn't open my eyes, because you don't want to be distracted. That's the point. The eye mask is just so that you're not distracted. So when you are stressful breathing, if we were to all stand up, we're not going to do this right now, but if I said, hey, everybody stand up and take a deep breath in, this is what it would look like. You would stand, you're sitting down, you would stand up, and you'd go take a deep breath in, and you'd do this. How many of you guys agree that's how it looks? When you breathe through your chest, that's stressful breathing. Boxers breathe through their chest because they're protecting their core, because they don't want to get punched in the core, so they're breathing. This is how they're breathing, right? So when you breathe through your belly is activating the parasympathetic system, and your chest activates the sympathetic system. Sympathy means sing, like a symphony. So whatever environment you're in, your chest activates whatever the attitude of the environment you're in, which is, so if it's a stressful environment, your body's gonna match whatever that environment in, which is stressful, and your body's gonna match that if you breathe through your chest. When you breathe through your belly like this, you activate your parasympathetic system, and then your parasympathetic system deactivates fight or flight mode, puts your body in a restoration mode, and relaxes your body, and puts your body in a very restful state. Make sense? So, and if you notice, who in here has cats and dogs? Who has a cat or a dog, right? cats and dogs yawn a lot, right? I have a cat, the cat yawns all the time, dogs yawn all the time. Yawning activates the parasympathetic system in a very profound way. So when you yawn, this is how you never yawn through your chest. You don't do this. This is how you yawn. It's always through the belly. Yawning, that's how you yawn, right? So when you yawn, yawning is belly breathing. It activates the parasympathetic system and it regulates how fast your body's burning energy. So here's the thing, a dog will be playing around and then the dog knows he's not going anywhere or she's not going anywhere. So the dog will then sit down and go, and we yawn. And you laugh at it, but what he's doing is the dog is yawning to relax his body so he can conserve his energy because he wants to go outside to go play. And he knows he's gonna get in trouble if he plays inside. So they yawn. Cats do the same thing. They yawn to regulate the burn rate of their energy. Make sense? So what we're gonna do before we do this breath work, we're gonna lay down, close our eyes, and we're gonna yawn several times just to activate that parasympathetic system. But before we do this, hang on, let me explain this. Before we do that, this is what you're gonna do. So I want you to watch me for a second.
Will you drop the lights?
Go ahead and watch me for a second. So sit up. You're gonna lay down. We're gonna do the yawning, but this is what the breathing is gonna be like. You're gonna put your hand on your belly, and you're gonna pull your breath. When I say pull, it's gonna be all through the mouth. So the inhalation and the exhalation is all through the mouth. So you're gonna do this. And you're gonna let the breath fall out. So watch my belly. I'm not pushing it. You're gonna go. And then right when it stops, or right before it stops, and I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. I'm inhaling at the pace of what would be like a relaxed exhale. So I'm just gonna go. And we're gonna do this for about 10 or 15 minutes. What happens is this. The first thing you're gonna notice is that your mouth's gonna get dry. And you're gonna think, oh my gosh, I need a drink of water. But after about 3 minutes, your mouth will start to salivate and there's moisture returns. You're like, oh yeah, I don't need to drink water, I can get through this. So my point is, you're gonna be tempted to grab your water to do this. Don't do that, just keep breathing. And again, it's a forced inhale at the pace of a relaxed exhale. The next thing you're gonna notice is that your face, your cheeks, or your fingertips are gonna get a little bit of tingling, and you're gonna feel that tingling. What's happening is, because you're breathing in a cycle, and like in a circle without a hesitation, so there's no stopping at the top and the bottom. It's either in or out, and there's no stopping. So because there's no stopping, you're filling your body with more oxygen than what it's using. So you're gonna feel that extra oxygen in your fingertips, in your face, and you're gonna feel that in the beginning. But what I want you to know is that you're just gonna keep on breathing. And you might, in the first 10 minutes, we'll breathe for about 10 or 12 minutes, but we're gonna breathe, and then you might even experience what's called tetany. Tetany is a hardening of your muscles, but it's not you flexing or it's not a cramping, but here's what happens. You're laying down, so look at me because you're laying down, your wrists might curl in or go like this, or your arms might just move automatically because your arms are constricting, and what's happening is there's healing that's happening in your arms, or it might happen in your leg, or you might feel some tightening in your chest, and you might think this feels like an anxiety attack, but it's not. Because you're activating the parasympathetic system, and your body has this extra energy, and you're not expending it by running or exercise, your body says, hey, let's send that energy to the part of the body that needs to be healed. And so you can experience tetany in your bicep, you can experience it in your wrist, you can experience it in your leg. I had a friend who was laying down and her leg went up like in the air a little bit, and she was like, what's happening? And that was just her body just healing something that's happening in her leg, okay? So we're only gonna do this for about 10 or 12 minutes, and then I'm just gonna tell you, I'll turn the music down, and then I'll just say, you can stop pulling your breath whenever you're ready. And then I don't want you to do anything, you're just gonna lay in there. You're gonna just lay there for about 2 minutes, not doing anything. Even, I don't want you to touch, talk to your neighbor or touch your neighbor, just stay kind of to yourself. And then I'm gonna say you can sit up, and then we're gonna talk for a couple minutes and then wrap up. Make sense? Any questions? Okay, I'll get my, let's go ahead and close our eyes, or put your eye mask on. And I want you just to stretch and yawn. So we're gonna stretch and yawn 3 times. You're just gonna stretch and yawn. Again, yawning activates that parasympathetic system, deactivates fight or flight mode, and helping you to kind of get back into in a very relaxed state. So go ahead and stretch and yawn again. Just stretch and maybe wiggle, turn to, like move your body side to side. Stretch and yawn again. All right. And I'm gonna walk through here. I'm gonna turn off this light room. All right, so let's stretch and yawn one more time. And I just want you to know that you're safe. You're with your team, you're with your coaches. Although you don't know me, I'm gonna stay up here in the front. You're safe. And it's important that we say that because if you don't feel like you're safe, then it's gonna be hard for you to relax. But I just want you to know you're safe. And maybe just under your breath, I want you to say to yourself, I'm safe. Just say it to yourself under your breath. I am safe. Say it again one more time. I am safe. Perfect. Now I just want you to start pulling your breath. Again, it's an intentional inhale through the mouth. Relax, exhale. With your hand on your belly, you should be feeling your belly going up and down. Perfect. And I'm going to over-exaggerate the sound of the breathing just so that you can hear that. Okay, so let's just start turning and pulling our breath. Might be getting dry, that's okay. It's going to start salivating here in just a minute. Just know that you're safe. There's nothing to be thinking about, nothing else to be doing, but just pulling the breath. No stopping, just a continual inhale. minutes. Go ahead and find yourself. You can remove your eye mask. Let's sit back up without communicating. Sit back up and let you stay in your same state. What I want you to know is I want you to give a word. What's a word that describes how you feel now? What's a word that you would use to describe how you feel right now? Go ahead.
Relax.
Relax.
Restful. Restful.
Restful. Anybody else?
Grateful.
Grateful. Just go ahead.
Light.
Light. Calm.
Tired.
Tired. Yeah. Yeah. Because you actually were able to relax, and then now your body says, yeah, I'm tired. Go ahead. Peace. Great. Just by a show of hands, how many of you like how you feel right now? You're like, I like doing that. That was good. All of you. Awesome. So, do you see what I'm talking about? Like, you can see what I'm talking about when I talk about how the rat was stressed. It couldn't see that the cheese was just right there. But I want you to notice, don't you feel like you're more, raise your hand if you feel bigger. Like you're like, I feel just bigger. Like, I feel like I can see more, understand more, feel more. I feel better, bigger, yeah. See, in life, even in the best life, even if your life is the best life, it's still stressful. Life is stressful. And if you don't regulate, like a cat or a dog, because they do that yawning a lot. If you spent one whole day watching your cat or dog, and you thought, I'm gonna write down how many times that my dog or cat yawns, relaxes, it's a lot. They do breath work. That is their form of breath work. When you do this practice every day, what happens is you build a muscle and you know how to relax, go back to being open, peaceful, rested, light, happy, grateful. You're building a muscle how to get back into this moment. Does that make sense? So you have an emotional home. And every day you wake up to that emotional home. How you feel emotionally. This is what you say. You wake up one morning, you say, man, I don't feel normal. I don't feel right. Something's off. How many of you woke up and you thought this? Okay. I know we're out of time. We're out of time, 5 o'clock, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. How many of you have woken up in the morning and you felt different about yourself and you did something that you don't normally do? Like you might have danced or you might have done something, you're like, I don't normally do this, but I do this when I know I'm really happy. How many of you guys know what I'm talking about? Okay. Do you know why you do that? Because something happened the prior day that you believed, something gave you evidence that you didn't have to believe so negatively about yourself. And through the night, you experienced something through the day, and then when you went to sleep, your brain processed what happened in the day, your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind said, you know that negative thing that we always think about ourselves? Well, today you don't have to believe it. And you wake up, you're like, I'm just kind of happy. And I know when I feel this way, because I go running in the morning, and then I'll kind of like dance when I'm running, and I don't like dancing. If I told my wife I did this, she'd be like, so you do dance? No, I do not dance. But I'll run, and I'll kind of run backwards, and I'll do this, and I'm like, and I'll start skipping, and I'm doing this thing, and I'm thinking, I'm so glad I'm doing this at 5 a.m., because my neighbors would think I'm crazy doing this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm happy today. Oh my gosh, I don't believe the stupid things I normally believe about myself today. Oh my gosh, something has happened. And so what I want you to realize is when you feel that, and you feel that extra happiness, notice that's not how you normally feel. But what you don't do is you don't say, something's off because I don't feel my normal self. Do you? You get what I'm saying? But if you felt extra negative in the morning, you'd say, something's off because I usually don't feel this negative about myself. And you see, and you think something's wrong. But when the reverse happens, and you let go of something that's negative about yourself, and you're not believing it, and you feel extra happy, you don't think something's wrong, do you? You get what I'm saying? But something is wrong when you wake up and you feel worse because you're believing stupid things that you shouldn't be believing about yourself. And when the opposite happens, you feel light, happy, peaceful. You feel how you feel right now. Do you agree with that? So what breath work does, it conditions you to unbelieve the stupid things that you don't have to believe about yourself, that you've conditioned yourself to believe. And when you unbelieve those things, you don't keep on hitting the wall. You're like, oh my gosh, the cheese is right there. I'm gonna go get it. It's been there the whole time. I can't believe I couldn't have seen it before. And that's what happened to me by doing breath work in my business. And I just kept turning, going, oh my gosh, there's cheese there. There's cheese there. There's cheese there. Oh my gosh. It's all around me. Everything I've ever wanted was right here. I didn't believe it. I couldn't see it because I didn't believe it was there. Breath work is a pathway of unbelieving the things that you wish you could unbelieve about yourself, and then stepping into a life that you didn't think was possible, but is. You have dreamt that is possible. You wish that was possible, but didn't understand how possible it really was. Okay, any questions before we go?
Can we link arms real quick in a circle?
Yeah. How do we want to do it? Yeah, there you go.
A big, huge circle. Just linking arms. Okay, as Louie was talking about something happening the day before and you wake up, did anybody wake up happy because you made the team yesterday?
Like a short foot?
Okay. So as he was speaking, you all have an incredible opportunity by making this team. Some of you will take advantage, I hope most of you take advantage of it and see how lucky you are to be on this team. Because some people aren't born with the genes to be athletic, or maybe they have one leg that they had a brother that was born with one leg, right? Or one eye, or no fingers. And so you're incredibly lucky to be here. And I know I've talked to a few of you about limiting beliefs. So I would challenge you to come up with just one limiting belief on maybe why I'm not a basketball player, and switch it like Louie's son did on wrestling. And if you need help, me, coach, can help you. But I've noticed in my work too, a lot of times we like to move so fast in our world to make us feel busy. And when we're stressed, we go to our phones to make us feel busy with something else to cope with it. But I've noticed when I slow down and step away, a lot of the times when we move fast, it's just to make us feel like we're working, but we're actually the rat that just keeps banging our head against the wall. So when you're stressful, I recorded this on the iPad. Is it okay if I upload it to YouTube? You guys can go listen to it on, I'll share the YouTube link and do this whenever you want. Like if you have a stressful day at school, or Coach Wheeler was a jerk to me at practice, go home and try this again, because it's super powerful. I got into yoga, hot yoga, and that's kind of breath work and meditation and stretching. But it's super powerful if you take it seriously. And I know probably if it's your first time, can feel awkward or weird, especially with the group, but it is powerful. And I'm just grateful to be coaching you guys again. I had to step away from coaching because same situation, we didn't have money, and I just had a kid, and so coaching was like what I wanted to do, because I went here and I know the demographics of North Davis. Like, it's the only Title I junior high in the state, meaning we're the poorest junior high in the state. So that's why Louie's story resonated with me, because it was the same thing. We could never win, but when I was here, we won a lot, and we overcame that narrative. And that's the goal for you, is just because we're North Davis doesn't mean we can't win. We can. And that's why I'm here. cheer with Louie real quick, and then your parents are probably waiting for you. You need this, whatever you want.
Norseman on 3, 1, 2, 3.
Norseman!
Guys, bring your mask up.
Make sure you have
Oh, there's eye mask, put your eye mask on the chair here.
Oh, girls, before you leave, we need all your phone numbers,
The
because
paper's over there on that little desk. Just do it real quick and
don't
get out
forget
there.
parent meeting on Thursday after practice.
Thursday, 1 o'clock. Please.
That's what I thought.
Do I need to go to the parents' meeting? Coach, are you in that picture? The thingy? What number?